Good afternoon and welcome to the November 5th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. I will now call this meeting to order and Commissioner Purnell will lead us in the flag salute. Zoom webinar participation is available for members of the public. The Zoom webinar ID and link are available on the posted agenda on the city website. Will we please have a roll call?
Apologize. Commissioner Gutierrez? Commissioner Almanza Larios? Commissioner Meeks?
Yes.
Commissioner McKelvey-Day?
Present.
Commissioner Ruck?
Yes.
Commissioner Purnell? Here. Commissioner Rockamora?
Here.
Staff introductions.
Kirsten Zering, Management Analyst.
The Superintendent Community Development Director.
Chris Callahan, City Attorney.
Courtney Grossman, Planning Manager.
Welcome, everyone. Public comments, or we'll now go into public comments. Public comments generally are limited to 2 minutes per speaker. The chair may further limit the time for public comments depending on the agenda schedule. Are there any comments from the public regarding items not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none. Are there any on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, you can use the raised hand feature.
No comments on Zoom.
Okay, we'll move on to consent. ID number 25-492, approval of minutes from October 15th, 2025 meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Rockamora?
No questions or comments?
Commissioner Meeks?
I discussed with her making sure that we had copies of them in the future. It's hard to approve something if you don't have it to look at. I see it's on the screen, but that's not very large and difficult to read. Any comment?
The minutes, they're not sent to you ahead of time?
Normally they're, well, yeah, but normally they put them on the dais when we get here.
Oh, I understand.
We could provide a physical
So
copy of meeting
future
minutes in the future.
Reference. We have a little change of administrative staff, so thank you for bringing that up so they can correct that. Commissioner Ruck?
No comments.
Commissioner Purnell?
No questions or comments.
And I have no questions or comments. Is there a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes as they are
Do we have a
Second
second?
the motion.
from September 17th, 2025.
With a motion from Commissioner Ruck and a second from Commissioner Meeks, we will have a roll call vote.
Apologize. Commissioner Rockamora?
Yes.
Commissioner Almanza Larios is absent. Commissioner Gutierrez is absent. Commissioner Meeks?
Yes.
Commissioner Ruck?
Yes.
Commissioner Purnell?
Yes.
Commissioner, Chairperson McKelvey-Day?
Yes.
Motion
Motion
passes.
passes, yes. Consideration ID number 25-494, Land Disposition and Development Agreement, DA 2025-001, related to city parking lots 8 and 12. Christopher Callahan, City Attorney, will present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Kirsten, will you put up the PowerPoint? There we go. And help me just advance the slides so we can stay there for a second. So good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. So we're presenting for your consideration this afternoon a land disposition and development agreement between the City of Salinas and Taylor Fresh Foods related to the disposition, that is the transfer, and the development of 2 city-owned parking lots, parking lot 8 and parking lot 12. Next slide, please. And just by way of background to orient the Planning Commission and the public as to the 2 parking lots we're talking about, shown on this slide, you can see parking lot 8, and that's the parking lot that's directly across the street from City Hall, across Lincoln Avenue. And parking lot 12 is directly across from City Hall, across Gabilan Street. So these are the 2 parking lots that we're talking about. They're both owned by the city, as I mentioned. Parking lot 12 is currently used primarily for city employee parking, and on the weekends it's available for public parking. And parking lot 8 is currently used for public parking for businesses and visitors to the downtown area. In 2020, the city declared both of these parking lots, among other city-owned properties in the downtown area, as surplus land pursuant to the Surplus Lands Act process. So through that process, the city made these 2 parking lots available for disposition and development by private developers. And in 2021, the city council took action to change the zoning designation of these 2 parking lots from public, semi-public to mixed use. This provides for more flexibility and more opportunity for development opportunities on those 2 parking lots. This action was supported by the adoption of a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program prepared pursuant to CEQA. So this may be the first time that the Planning Commission has considered a land disposition and development agreement. We just want to pause for a second and briefly explain the purpose and the benefits of a development agreement. So a land disposition and development agreement is basically an agreement between the city and a private party pursuant to which the city agrees to transfer properties to the private party for specific purposes. That's the disposition portion of this agreement. The development agreement portion provides certainty with respect to the laws, regulations, and policies that will apply to the eventual development of these projects. It provides assurances to the private party that upon the approval of the project, they may proceed with the project in accordance with the existing policies, rules, and regulations that were in effect at the time the agreement was approved and entered into. So the project would not be subject to changes in law. This provides certainty for the developers, and it provides really an incentive and encouragement by the city to provide for private participation in planning and development of projects that might not otherwise occur. So the agreement that's attached to your report is not in its final form, but the main substantive provisions of the agreement are there. There are some blank spaces you will see in that draft, which we'll need to complete before we go to City Council. We'll make sure all of the attachments are attached before we can go to City Council with the final agreement. But since we're at the point where we think we're ready for the Planning Commission's consideration, that's why we're bringing it forward for you this afternoon.
I have a quick question, sorry to interrupt. I'm just double checking here. Are we showing slides on the Zoom so they can see what you're talking about?
Yes, the slides are shown on the
Okay,
Zoom.
because it looks like the screen that we're seeing is just showing us.
Yeah, it has the screen share.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. Just want to clarify that before we keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could advance a couple of slides, please, to the discussion slide. So let's get into some of the specifics about the proposed projects. So as described in the LDA, the Land Disposition and Development Agreement for Parking Lot 12, the proposed project is a development of a multi-family residential and retail use. The residential component will consist of approximately 66 residential units of mixed bedroom counts. Because that residential component will consist of more than 10 residential units, it is required to meet the city's inclusionary housing ordinance and guidelines. The developer has committed to meeting those requirements. The development of this project is expected to occur first before the development begins on parking lot 8. The developer has prioritized the city's need for housing. That's why this project is moving first, with the development expected to occur within 1 to 5 years after receiving project approvals. This project would be subject to an administrative site plan review process, and so it would not be coming back to the Planning Commission for consideration beyond what you are seeing this afternoon. So for parking lot 12, the proposed project is a development of a hotel, retail, and commercial use. Development on this project is expected to occur within 3 to 8 years after receiving project approvals. The hotel use of this portion of the project would be subject to a discretionary conditional use permit. However, we don't expect that that project would come to the Planning Commission either unless there's some sort of an appeal or challenge to those administrative approvals. So on your dais, in the next slide, please, Kirsten, there are a couple of renderings, and these are the most recent renderings on the dais, that is, of the proposed project on parking lot 12. That's the multifamily residential use. We're providing conceptual renderings of each of these projects just to give you an idea of what these projects may look like. These are not the final renderings for either project, but again, just to give the Planning Commission an idea of what the developer at least has suggested these projects may look like. And so the next few slides, Kirsten, if you can just click through them, you can see more renderings of the parking lot 12 multifamily residential use project. And going on to the next one, Kirsten, please, another view of that same project. And the final rendering on the next slide is what the proposed hotel, retail, and commercial use on parking lot 8 may look like. And so the next slide, Kirsten, please, We believe that the Planning Commission's consideration of this agreement is exempt from CEQA for those reasons indicated on the slide. The next slide, please. We also believe that this development agreement is consistent with at least 2 of the City Council's strategic plan initiatives, both economic development and housing. The next slide, please. There's no immediate fiscal impact to the city's general fund. And the final slide is our recommendation, and that's to approve a resolution recommending that the City Council take the following 2 actions: finding the project exempt from CEQA and adopting an ordinance approving a land disposition and development agreement between the City of Salinas and Taylor Fresh Foods. And I just want to note one more thing. There was a letter from MST that we received. It's also on the dais, and so just bringing that to the Commission's attention and making sure that's included in the record. And with that, all of your staff are available for questions.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any questions from the commissioners to Mr. Callahan or members of the city staff? Commissioner Rockamora?
No questions.
Commissioner Ruck?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Meeks?
I'll defer my questions.
Commissioner Purnell?
I do have a few questions. Do we know the range or like a minimum revenue that's expected on this deal? I know there has to be an approval, but is there a ballpark?
We don't have a ballpark because the appraisals have not been done. The LDA calls out a process for receiving appraisals. And so at that point, we'll know what at least the appraised value of each of these parking lots is, but we don't have a ballpark. I don't want to make an estimate at this point.
And then do we have an opportunity today to chat with folks from Taylor, or are they here?
There are representatives from Taylor Fresh Foods here, yes.
So ask that now.
When we get to the public comment portion, we'll ask them to come up first, and then you can ask your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, and I have no questions. So then we will open for public comment on this item. Are there any comments from the public regarding this item?
And Madam Chair, if I may, I would ask that we give the Taylor Fresh Foods representatives an opportunity to come up and speak first if they like, and then they can respond to Commissioner Purnell's questions.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Kelly Sutherland with Tony Lombardo's office, an attorney for the project.
And I'm Leonard Batty with Taylor Farms.
And I think you had some
Do you
questions?
have questions?
Oh, that was simple, yes.
We're here to help.
Yeah, I know that the city, we have our inclusionary housing ordinance, so my question was, is there a commitment to actually build the units, or are we just gonna pay the in lieu and do the minimum?
We don't know yet. This hasn't been penciled out. We don't know how much the property is gonna cost. We will comply with the ordinance and we can agree to do that, but until we get a lot further in, this is going to be a loser for Taylor Farms. They're not gonna be making any money off of this. So it's basically how much pain can Taylor Farms tolerate as far as being a good citizen and donating to the community.
So from the inclusionary housing ordinance, Mr. Callahan, is there a minimum requirement?
There's actually a range, and the developer can choose among 3 options. This is actually, if they're going to incorporate them into a project, there's always that in lieu fee option, but option 3, the minimum is 12%, and it goes up to 20%.
And then the timeline is super long on these projects, so my question was in terms of reporting back to council, or what would the communication chain look like? Because I feel like we're in a housing crisis, right? So the timeline is, oh, my mic is on, the green light is on. Yeah.
Can you speak into it?
Yeah, so my question was just in terms of communicating back, is 8 years an average timeframe for a project of this scope?
Well, let me answer the question a couple of ways. First of all, if the development, land disposition and development agreement is approved, there's a statutory obligation that the city report back on the progress on an annual basis. And so we'll be making that report out to the city council and the public, and we could certainly include the planning commission in that communication. But for 2 projects of this size and scope, in our opinion, at least, 8 years is not an unreasonably long period of time.
Thank you. More
Any
questions?
other questions? No? Okay. Anybody else?
No, unless you want to make a comment?
We obviously think it's a great project. And we hope the city will approve it.
Yeah, I can speak on behalf of Taylor Fresh Foods. I think Bruce is excited to bring more housing to downtown to support the local businesses. We hope that the tenants in in this complex are people that are working downtown and shopping here and supporting the local businesses. So
Yeah.
that is the purpose.
All right, thank you.
Chair, I have a question for
Sure.
for them. Do you have any ideas as of yet, the cost of, say, one of the studio apartments?
No, and we won't until we have some idea of what the dirt's gonna cost, because it's all part of the overall cost of construction. You have to include the cost of the dirt too, and we don't even have an appraisal, so.
And those may be rental units as well. So there's no obligation that they be for sale units, they may be rental units as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
You have a
Commissioner
question,
Beck?
Commissioner?
Madam Chair, I have a comment. It's time for comments.
Not yet. Yeah, we're still on public comment. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Are there any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, are there any on, oh, okay.
So, we weren't sure what this was all about, because all we got was this public hearing, and we're an adjacent landowner to this parking lot, and so have a lot of questions that are coming up, like, so the housing, is it gonna be affordable housing as well? Because I think that's the part that is in dire need, right? And especially with the timeline. And so if they're gonna be for sale, or is the city gonna make sure that there's a certain percentage that would be for, I don't know if it pertains to this area, but HUD or people with not the ability to pay for a downtown apartment. That was it.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Do we have any raised hands in Zoom?
Yes, we do.
Okay, go ahead. Looks like Liz.
All right, Liz, your hand is raised. I have allowed you to talk, so you are able to now. You're unmuted.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Liz. I live in District 1. I just want to make a comment first, or a suggestion. The presentation that is currently being reviewed, if that could be made available as part of like the downloaded documents. And I say this because it's almost like I had to dig pretty hard to see that the city is actually going through a negotiation phase for the sale of these properties or the appraisal. It just seems to me like it's being rushed. And I'm speaking more of a concern for accountability and transparency on these negotiations. The staff report is very light in terms of the background information for such a big project. And to the gentleman that just spoke before me, it's almost like no one really knows what's going on, but we want to push forward with a recommendation to City Council. And if I heard correctly, this is not coming back to the Planning Commission. So just a lot of questions, and I would just ask for more transparency in the project itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next we have Steve on Zoom.
Steve's hand is not raised.
Okay. All right. So we will close public comment. Are there any additional questions or comments from the commissioners to Mr. Callahan or members of the city staff? Commissioner Rocamora?
Because it's an administrative approval process. The residential development is a site plan review, which is administrative. And so it will not be coming back. And the hotel is a conditional use permit, and should they move forward with a conditional use permit, that component more than likely will come back to the Planning Commission only.
Commissioner Ruck?
Yeah, I do have some comments. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Sutherland, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, this is an approval of a development agreement with a bunch of lawyers and go to court. But really, it has nothing to do with the buildings themselves. It's a development agreement that we're approving or not approving. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's exactly what your resolution says, but at this point, we're looking, Taylor Farms is looking for the opportunity to enter into an agreement with the city so Taylor can explore whether it can make this work.
Okay. And great. And I personally would like to see the years moved up in this, but, you know, I know it takes a long time. I understand. I hope it does work. I personally don't see anything in this development agreement that bothers me, except for the years that it takes, and I understand. I understand it takes a long time. I would like to see it be successful, and thank you for verifying that information.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments, Commissioner Meeks? Any, Commissioner Purnell?
So what are the stipulations if this purchase goes through and Taylor Farms can no longer live up to the
The city has the opportunity to get the properties back. So whatever they paid, we would just return the purchase price and reclaim the properties.
Well, and maybe, and it's more like an option agreement really, because we haven't done any due diligence. And so if we get into it and we find, God forbid, that there's something wrong with the property and we don't want to buy it, then we won't buy it. Taylor won't buy it. So it just gives us the opportunity to take a look at the property, and then if we're ready to move, then we say, okay, and then we go to town and make a beautiful building, 2 beautiful buildings.
And in terms of process, was Taylor the one who approached the city to purchase, or was this a property that was split up?
Right, so this has actually been going on for several years. Taylor Fresh Foods had actually approached the city with the potential to develop those 2 parking lots.
And they were the only potential purchaser to develop those spaces?
So as I mentioned, this has gone through the Surplus Lands Act process. And so originally there was a low-income housing development agency that was interested in parking lot 8, but they withdrew their interest in that property, which allowed it to be freed up for anything other than low-income housing.
Okay.
And that's when Taylor Fresh Foods came to the city and said we're interested in potentially purchasing and developing these properties. It's been about 5 years that these discussions have been going on, quite frankly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No. Okay. And then I had a comment. I do agree with Liz about seeing the presentations online. We've done that a few of those in the past, but it does help for seeing or referencing these items, and that's also why I was asking, making sure they can see that if you're reviewing a YouTube, you know, since this is kind of the whole purpose of why we're putting this online. So if administratively, if we can include that, the presentation, I think that does help with transparency. And then, so I have a question. If, you know, just assuming everything gets, you know, worked out through this process. So there was notice given to the public, and then where is their next opportunity if they want to be, are they going to be noticed again for other stages, or is this it?
So the next opportunity would be the city council's consideration, and public notice has gone out for that in anticipation of a November 18th city council discussion, assuming that the planning commission makes a recommendation this afternoon. But depending on what happens this afternoon, that November 18th date could always shift, and public notice would again be provided.
Okay, so that's for the going into this project, to just saying, yes, all parties are interested, we're going to consider this. But is there anywhere along the administrative path that they would be able to say, you know, once, because you don't really have much information about the projects yet. Is there a point that it comes back up to the surrounding businesses?
I'll try to answer this one on a process side. There's 2 parts, right? The first one is the site plan review. There's no notice, there's no hearing. It's a use that is identified in the zoning code that is allowed by right, so long as the development standards that are contained in the zoning code or whatever might else be in the development agreement are complied with, then that project is approved. In fact, it has to be approved by law with ministerial actions. The other one is a little bit different. I'm understanding it's a conditional use permit. With a conditional use permit, yes, public notice is required. It's typically 300 feet in all directions around the property, along with a posting on the site. And that would be, I'm assuming the way this is set up is through an administrative CUP. So when that administrative process plays out and the notice goes out, if an interested person were to request a hearing, in other words, protest the administrative decision of approval, then yes, it would go to the Planning Commission. And at the Planning Commission, same thing, it could be appealed in this case, and then moved on to the City Council.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I don't have any other questions. Would the commissioners like to make a motion?
I move to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, can we please have sorry, I should state this. With a motion from Commissioner Rockamora and a second from Commissioner Ruck, will we have a roll call vote?
If I may, Chair, I just want to make sure that we clarify the motion for the record. So it's a motion to approve a resolution recommending the City Council, 1, find the proposed project exempt from environmental analysis pursuant to CEQA guidelines, and 2, I'm recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the land disposition and development agreement. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Rockamora,
Yes.
Commissioner Almanza Lorios is absent, Commissioner Gutierrez is absent, Commissioner Meeks.
You know, I have no doubt that, seeing the Taylor Building on Main Street, that you do a beautiful job. I know this would look great. But I feel so underinformed about what's going on here. I vote no.
Commissioner Ruck,
She was the
Yes.
second.
Commissioner Purnell,
No.
Chairperson McKelvey Day.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay, so Land Disposition and Development Agreement 2025-001. The Planning Commission's action on this item is a recommendation to the City Council in support of, we don't have it listed, but Land Disposition and Development Agreement, DA 2025-001, related to city parking lots 8 and 12. Should I just read the recommendation? It's not on my typical sheet. Okay.
Correct, it'd be
Consider,
a recommendation to the council, correct?
Hmm?
Yes, it would be a recommendation to the council.
yeah, that consider, so we are recommending to City Council, do I just read it? I'm sorry, it's not on here. Find the proposed project exempt from environmental analysis pursuant to sections 15060C, 15061B3, and/or 15378 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and adopt an ordinance approving a land disposition and development agreement, DA 2025-001, between the City of Salinas and Taylor Fresh Foods, Inc., related to city parking lots 8 and 12. All right, thank you. Future agenda items. Joint study session, City Council, Planning Commission minutes of June 10th, 2025. Not sure why that's in future agenda items. Is that meant to be there?
I could try to elaborate here. That was meant as a follow-up report, and those minutes have been distributed to the planning commissioners electronically. They're also on the city's website at the, if you select 2025, and there's only one joint meeting, so it's really easy to find. City Council, Planning Commission joint meeting.
Yeah, I didn't receive it, but I saw in the minutes from last meeting that there was a notation that they were in there, so I was able to find it online. So it's in there as an unofficial. Now we have a city attorney here. Is that something that needs to be approved?
So if I'm understanding correctly, the joint study session minutes never came back to the Planning Commission for consideration?
Correct.
They should.
Okay,
And so they need to be put on the agenda as a consent item for the commission to take action on, please.
okay. So administration, if we can have that for the next meeting, to have the minutes. And so everybody is clear, I didn't receive it by email from staff, but if you're able to look online and see the city minutes, or they'll be coming to us for next meeting.
So the future agenda item with those minutes would be correct. Also, I have
Oh,
other
yes,
agenda
now.
items. We have a couple of other items. There's an alcohol license at 1018 North Davis Road. This is a proposed convenience store. It's an off-sale license, what we call a type 21, beer, wine, and spirits. A second item is a zoning code amendment to rescind the city's ADU regulations. This will be a recommendation item for the commission onto council. There will be a notation that the code amendment would place in a pointer to the state regulations. In the meanwhile, the city will continue to work on putting together a new zoning code along with a new ADU ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. So we were charged to have presentations from staff because we didn't have business. Is that only when we don't have business, or how did that kind of play out, that we didn't have anything
Let me jump in
presented
here
today?
first. There was originally a presentation also scheduled for this afternoon that was going to be given from my office, but we were focusing on the development agreement, and so we couldn't get that presentation for this afternoon, so our apologies for that. But Lisa, you may want to add some more.
Yes, so we will be having a presentation at the next meeting from PlaceWorks, our zoning code consultant, on phase 1 and seeking some initial visioning feedback from the Planning Commission.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Anything else from commissioners? All right, this meeting is adjourned.